My Unplugged section today is really kind of a smorgasbord of a few things. If you watch the Unplugged last show, and I urge you to watch it, I talked a lot about the federal debt and the fact that our country is broke and we're never going to be able to pay it back. That's a fact. I mean, 29 trillion and counting, we can't even balance a budget. So it's just going to keep going and going and going till it hits an inflection point and interest rates rise and inflation rises. And all of a sudden, as I mentioned, that explosion you hear out your back door is going to be the U.S. economy blowing up. I'm going to get a little bit deeper into other aspects of that today. I mentioned last show that one of the great businessmen of all time, Ross Perot, who ran for the presidency in 1992, that was won by Bill Clinton, he received 20 million votes, more than any other independent before or since. He ran as an independent candidate. Said the debt is akin to the crazy ant who's in the cellar. And the crazy ant is down there. The neighbors know she's there, but nobody wants to do anything about it. That was his Perotism analogy of the national debt in 1992 when it was 4 trillion. Today it's 29 trillion. The progressives, in my opinion, you have to also understand my background and where I kind of come from this. I grew up in a household that were Kennedy Democrats, okay? And I grew up in a neighborhood that were Kennedy Democrats. Most of the Irish immigrants and Italian immigrants and people that were in upstate New York, they loved John Kennedy, especially if you were a Catholic, okay? We get to Bill Clinton, and you take a look at Bill Clinton, and people love Bill Clinton because he was a centrist. He was a moderate Democrat that saw, in people's opinion, all sides of the equation as it related to the fiscal responsibility, okay, that you have in governing, and the moral responsibility that you have. Bill Clinton was probably the greatest example of that. As I mentioned last show again, he's the only president in modern times that for a year or two was able to actually not only balance the budget, but create a surplus. What does that mean? Spend less than what you take in, which we haven't done in so long, it's not even funny. But the progressives have taken over the Democratic Party. And on Tuesday, they got sent a message. And people are not interested in that level of politics. They're not. I'm not. No one really is. If you're looking for handouts, you're in the wrong country. Okay? This is a place where you come and you try to live the American dream. Now, if you're thwarted from your ability to live the American dream because of the color of your skin, because of your background, because of your religion, then shame on anybody that's allowing that to happen. But this is a country that is a capitalist society that ultimately has to be based on hard work and income. Okay? Now, I have said over and over and over that there are social programs that are in the current construct that I'm all for, because some people need the help and can't help themselves. But that's not what we're seeing today. We're seeing people with their hands out, and we're seeing politicians that are these progressive Democrats that ultimately want to just print money and hand money out that we don't have. Not one of them understands what I'm talking about when I talk about the national debt and what the ramifications of that are going to be. Cori Bush from Missouri, a squad member. What's the squad? Led by AOC, Ilhan Omar, that group, okay, that have garnered, for some reason, so much attention in this country, it's unbelievable. She characterized Joe Manchin, who's the senator from West Virginia, that basically is trying to use common sense to try to figure out this social spending bill on what's going on. For lack of support, she chastised him for lack of support on the social spending bill, saying that his lack of support is, quote now, I'm quoting her, anti-black, anti-child, anti-women, anti-immigrant. This is the world that we're living in today. If you don't agree with the people on the far left, all they really do is just come after you and start saying things that are completely irrelevant. Joe Manchin is not anti any of those things. Comes from West Virginia. He's a Democrat, okay? He comes from a relatively conservative red state, but I think that he is a combination between being socially responsible and being fiscally responsible. This is what we're lacking here. We don't have the money anymore. So how do you pay for it, Corey? If all of this is true what you say, how do you not only pay for this now $1.75 trillion bill, how do you pay back the $29 trillion and counting? And I'm going to get to a whole nother subject that nobody talks about. This is 6 crazy ants in the closet, okay? If the deficit is 1 crazy ant in the basement, this is 6 in the closet. Nancy Pelosi decides today, and we covered this earlier, she's going to add 4 weeks of paid family and medical leave back into a bill that already is so expensive that we can't pay for it. And you have to wonder, what is she really thinking? What is the Speaker of the House really thinking? Okay? I covered the $29 trillion, as I mentioned, in the last Unplugged. It doesn't even account for a gigantic major issue that I'm going to talk to you about here. And again, I could do 7 shows on this. I'm going to try to do it in 30 seconds. It's the unfunded government liabilities as it relates to Social Security and Medicare. These numbers dwarf our national debt. They're about $100 trillion. And these are the unfunded portions to the Social Security, and this is everywhere, okay? This is everywhere. This isn't made up by me. This is out there for anybody that wants to read about it. It's $100 trillion the government owes, where it's promised its citizens without the funds to fulfill its obligations. Social Security, Medicare, Parts A, B, and D. And according to the Treasury Department, now this isn't me, this is the Treasury Department, the U.S. unfunded liability includes everything that I just mentioned. This is out of the Treasury Department, Social Security and Medicare. Plus veterans benefits that have been promised to these people. How are we going to pay for it? How is this going to be handled? Who's talking about this? Who is going to be the reporter that takes this on, Sarah?
I don't know, and I hope someone does take it on, because this is stuff that a lot of people don't talk about, unfortunately, that people don't understand even.
I'll tell you what they do understand. They understand the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has ruined Kennedy and Obama and Bill Clinton's party. Mm-hmm. They've ruined it.
Yep.
Okay? So it's going to be up to the Democrats now. Is this the road you want to go down? Mm-hmm. You were sent a very strong message. Nancy Pelosi is tone deaf.
Yep.
Okay, if she had any sense about things at all, she wouldn't be doing what she's doing yesterday.
But she's getting pressure from half of her own party.
Yeah, but my point is, I don't care who it is. Yeah. It's either right or wrong.
Right.
And let me just say, I'm not trying to suggest that we should deprive people who need help of the help.
Right.
But we got to be able to pay for it. It's got to be done in a manner, and they all say this now. I get back to this, Sarah. You've heard this. These programs are paid for.
They're not paid
They don't tell you how they're paid for, but you got to remember, I'm old enough now that I remember all of this for 20, 30 years. Well, they're paid for. Well, then how the hell does the debt go up from $4 trillion in 1992, Ross Perot Sr.'s presidential run, to $29 trillion? Mm-hmm. Forgetting about, you understand these social programs now?
Right.
These Medicare and Medicaid and veterans benefits and Social Security. Do you understand that those have to be funded?
Yep, everything.
I read the other day that in Social Security, if they don't do something, they're going to have to start cutting benefits by 2034. That's 22. That's 12 years from now.
Wow.
Okay, that's what they're projecting now. Okay, but you know what this is? You've heard the expression "kick the can down the road."
Right.
Nobody wants to talk about this.
Right.
Nobody. Our country's broke, ladies and gentlemen. We're broke. And we're talking about social spending bills, and we're talking about all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody has got to take a microphone and put it in Chuck Schumer's face and Joe Biden's face, and not let him get away with, well, this is paid for. This bill's paid for.
Well, and look how cheap it is. It's $1.9 trillion.
Let's assume it's paid for.
Yeah.
Which is a huge assumption. What are you going to do on the $29 trillion and the $1 trillion plus a year in deficits? What are you doing about that? Because that's going to be the cord that chokes the economy here.
Right.
It's going to choke us off.
Yep.
And then you have these unfunded things. I had a friend of mine who's a great guy, my old college roommate, who's in the wealth management business. And I had him calculate and tell me treasury bills and what the yield on treasury bills are. You buy treasury bills because that's part of the bonds that you buy that fund all this stuff.
Right.
What's the yield on a 10-year treasury? Can you believe that it was less than 1% and now it's 1.5% for a 5 or 10, a 10-year treasury? A 10-year treasury. There's no return to any of this.
Right.
Why would you loan money to an economy that's running at 125% ratio now? Remember the ratios?
Yep.
GDP to debt.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? This just shows that the country is artificially pushing down these interest rates because, God forbid, if they went up, that's the explosion out the back door. And I'll end with this. The stock market's going crazy. Nobody that I talk to now, smarter people way than me, can figure this out. You know, the S&P's trading at 23, 24 times earnings. Somebody needs to get a coloring book and come in here and explain to me what the hell's going on. I can't figure it out.
And if you can't figure it out, and people who
way smarter than me,
way smarter than you can't figure it out, I mean, that's a problem.
Well, and you just got to wonder, what road are we going down? Yeah. So in closing of this, and you get to your headlines, getting back to this, everyone, there is so much financial turbulence that's out there that we ignore every day. When I see these social spending bills coming down the pike and you hear all these people that couldn't add this up if their life depended on it, well, this is only $1.75 trillion and we've come down and we've done this. I mean, you almost can't watch the TV anymore.
Yeah.
And I think the American people are getting sick of it. I really do.
I think so.
Let's help the people that need the help in the existing programs that we have. But we got to figure out, if they made me president for a week, the first order of business for me would be to get a balanced budget amendment passed and stick to it. Because we can't continue to borrow money like this.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
But somehow it's going to be racist, anti-immigration, anti-women.
Anti-women, anti-immigrant.
Anti-everything. Cancel culture is alive and well.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Frank.